Hey everyone, this is Joe with SignTracker and wanted to talk to you today about how to grow your sign shop and not lose your mind. When I was thinking about this talk, I was thinking maybe the best way to do this is just to write a list of 100 things that Joe has screwed up in the sign business over the past 25 years and just let you have that and say, don't do this and you'll be fine. But I thought maybe it would be better to be a little focused. So let's talk through these slides. First of all, I've owned a couple different sign shops, different models. They both worked great. I never really thought much about the sign industry as a career. Actually majored in religion in college thinking I was going to save the world. And when I graduated, I realized there's no jobs in the religion section in the newspaper. So I, pretty much prayed, dear sweet baby Jesus, show me a sign. And here I am. It's where I landed in the sign business. I'm not sure that's exactly what I had in mind, but it's worked out great. I always love to hear the stories of how people get into the sign business. Most times I hear, my grandparents or my parents started a shop and I'm second, third generation. And again, I think a lot of people just don't think about the sign industry as a career. The two shops that I've owned were both started from scratch. One was full fabrication and installation, crane trucks, huge shop, 10 million in sales every year. And it was great. I worked a ton of hours. I felt like I worked 6 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day, and did that year after year for 10 plus years. Sold the business, was a little burnt out, took a little bit of time off, started working for another shop, just doing sales on the creative side, design side of things. And after a few years, decided to start my own business again with my daughter, Elizabeth, shown here with the smiley face. We started Think Big Signs. Within very short order, we built the business up to 1.5 million in sales. We only had 6 employees, had a very small office. We focused primarily on design and project management, and then we outsourced every bit of the fabrication and installation. Elizabeth and her husband took over that business because SignTracker started really taking off, and I was spending a lot of time, talking with sign shops during the day. So they fired me and said, Dad, look, you need to go and help as many people as you can and go do this. And so I really feel lucky because I love being able to talk to sign shops about their problems. And what I've discovered is they have the same problems that I had over the years, right? Tracking jobs, providing consistent quotes to customers, and then having a way to really train their staff and communicate what needs to be done in the course of the day to their team. So anyway, I'm grateful. Thank you for allowing me to do this. So when I talk to sign shops, I get these questions over and over, right? Maybe you can relate to these. I need more work. I feel like I need more revenue coming in, but I'm already so overloaded. What am I supposed to do? Why can't I find better jobs and better clients? Am I even making money at this thing? And how am I supposed to grow a business and have a life and not get burnt out? So let's see if we can solve some of these problems. There's 3 things I want to talk about today. First, how to attract more quality customers. So things that I definitely did wrong is, maybe you're already pretty far down the road. You have a huge overhead, which I had that scenario in my first shop, and you had this pressure to take almost anything that came in the door because you had such a huge payroll and overhead and expenses. Or you're just starting out and you're thinking to yourself, oh, I just need any table scrap that comes in the door. The problem with that is it starts to overload your system with jobs that just aren't good for the business. And what that does is obviously overloads the shop with unprofitable jobs. It squanders your time to develop quality relationships with better customers. Also, if everyone in the shop is running around feeling this unbelievable pressure, like we're always behind, things are falling through the cracks, we're missing stuff, it lowers productivity and ultimately impacts the bottom line. So things that I learned, and the hard way, right? So I think in my second sign shop, I did learn these lessons in my first sign shop, but it took a while, a lot of bumps there. But on the second sign shop, I started out with this idea that 80% of my profits came from those top 20 customers. And so because I had already had the experience with the first shop, on the second shop, I decided that that's what I was going to focus on right out the chute, was quality relationships. And I'm not saying that we didn't take a couple bad jobs here and there. We did. But, and so, I guess I would ask you, and I'm sure you all have your nightmare stories, right? So, a client comes in, it's like, hey man, I was fall for this one for some reason, but if you hook me up on this deal, right, I will give you all my work. I have a tight budget, I get a tight timeline, we're just starting out, but man, I'm going to tell everyone about you. And those deals, what happens, right? Like you end up doing 10 different designs. You can't seem to satisfy them. They complain the whole way through the process. They complain about the finished product, and then it's hard to collect the final balance. Or if you take the time to develop quality relationships, you're going to find that you're invited to the table and that they want you to be part of their process. So the other thing about quality customers is their close ratio is much higher. So if you're in a relationship with them, and you've heard it said, I'm sure, in business, that it's much easier to retain a client than it is to get a new one. Well, that's true. And if you look at the close ratio, and you could Google some of these numbers, it's pretty consistent around most industries. But 60 to 70% of the quotes that you do for an existing customer close, where only 5 to 20% on those that are just looking for a bargain. And so, in our business, that the processes of getting to the point where the customer approves a quote can be really a huge time investment. So whether you're going out doing surveys or design work or meetings, calling the city, doing research on code, what the property manager allows, all of it, all of it that goes into it. Wouldn't you rather close 60 to 70% of those deals? Also, quality customers tend to spend more per project because they have an objective in mind, right? So they're not going to show up and say, hey, we're building this apartment complex, and you know what? We really can't afford signs for the restrooms, and maybe we can't afford a sign on the front of the building. But no, they're looking to do the whole project. Also, they value your work. If they have a relationship with you ongoing, they value you and what you bring to the table, and they're willing to pay for it. So, and the last thing is, they're looking, just like you're looking for quality customers, they're looking for reliable partners, right? They want to be able to trust you and work with you and not have to go through the stress of finding a new vendor every time. So that leaves me to ask you this, and this is kind of just a silly thing, but would you rather have 20 crappy customers and focus all your attention on that, or would you rather have 4 really good, sweet ones and make much better money? So let's talk about what you can do instead. If you take the time to identify the kinds of quality customers that you want to work with, and then creatively connect with them. And so what do I mean by that? The kind of customers that you're hoping to get, like say you focus on vehicle reps, right? And you just want to go after fleet graphics. You want to go after companies that have 50 trucks on the road. It's highly unlikely that those folks are going to go to Google and go, sign shops near me. They're going to be working with people that they have relationships with. The same with like architects or whatever. People that have high dollar projects have relationships. And so they're high touch relationships. So you need to go out and connect with them. It's highly unlikely. It might happen once in a while. You get lucky. But it's highly unlikely they're going to come to you. You're going to have to go to them and connect with them. Everybody else, look, automate it the best you possibly can, right? Make it low touch. So if you're going to occasionally do one-off banners or whatever, have a couple of, run some Google ad campaigns, have a form on your website that it's easy for people to just access and upload their information. And my all-time favorite is to say no. But these are going to be sprinkled throughout this talk. I was like a Joe hokey thing, but understand that you're awesome and you bring value to high touch relationships, to quality relationships. I struggled with this for a long time, like, oh, I'm not really a business owner, I'm just a sign guy, And the bottom line is, what we do as sign people is very complex, from design to engineering to research to skilled labor to expensive equipment. And there's a lot that goes into it. And high quality relationships are going to have a deep appreciation for that. So when you come to the table, realize that you're awesome and you're there to help them accomplish big things. So let's talk about how to start finding quality customers, because this is the big thing. Well, how do you get them? So it's a creative process, right? So you have to first figure out where they hang out and go to them. So let's say, for example, I'm going to say architects. You want to connect with architects. They're designing a ton of projects, whether it's interior build-outs or retail build-outs or big buildings or whatever. Figure out where they like to go. Do they have happy hours? Do they have mixers? Do they have an association that puts events on? Is it something you can sponsor? Do they have a local trade show? So once you figure out where they hang out, start to go and connect. And experiment with it. Maybe the trade show doesn't work out so well, but the mixers are great. Buy a couple of appetizers or drinks for some folks and get to know them and connect with them or whatever. One thing that we did a lot of is we got involved in nonprofits. Quality companies love their relationships with nonprofits. They're very proud of them. So we had one event in town here in Austin, Texas called Barkitecture, and architects would design dog houses, and then they would, we would partner with them, and we would do one, sometimes two a year, and then the architects would design them, and we would build them, and of course we would donate the materials and the labor, and but the thing is, we would get the architects to come into the shop during the process of the doghouse being built, and we got to showcase things that we were working on and problems we were solving in other projects. It was fantastic. We made so many great connections doing that. Plus, we got to go to the shows. They would have these dog houses set up in booths and beer and wine tents and food tents and all that. It was a big party, and the dog houses would get bid on, and we would get to walk around and look at the other dog houses and meet other architects and design firms, and it just led to tons of business. Habitat for Humanity is another one. I highly encourage you. If you are in a place where they have a Habitat for Humanity chapter, we made some great connections. Like that box truck you see in the picture here, for example, we did all the graphics for that. On the back of the box truck was like graphics donated by SignTracker International. Every time they built a house, we would put a 4x8 site sign up with all the different corporations that were donating to get this house built, architects and tech companies or whatever, local businesses, Home Depot, and then SignTracker International. And it just allowed us to just build these great relationships with these companies. We would also go out once a quarter. This is just an idea. And we would bring myself as the owner, usually a designer, maybe a salesperson, a couple folks from the shop. And, 4 or 5 of us would go out once a quarter and swing hammers and do paintbrushes, paint or whatever, and volunteer on build days. And of course, we would pay the employees for their time while they were out on site. It wasn't forced volunteerism or anything. And the connections we made were just phenomenal. It actually led to me serving on the board in Austin Habitat for Humanity for 5 years. And the amount of projects and work we got from those relationships was phenomenal. So again, get creative, have some fun. There's no exact science to marketing. It's going out and experimenting and trying different things, sponsoring different events, sponsor a little league team, whatever. Just experiment with these things. And when you find a few things that work, double down. So let's look at a few profiles. Another way, when you start connecting with these folks is really focus on what they care about and then craft your messaging around that. So for example, architects and designers, again, they're designing these beautiful buildings, beautiful build outs or whatever. They want to make sure that the integrity of their designs are preserved and that the quality of materials on the projects are excellent. They don't want to just put, something cheap and crappy on their beautiful designs and their beautiful buildings. So we would oftentimes go to an architect's office and would host a luncheon, a couple $100, right? Bring in some tacos and some sodas and things like that. And then we would put up some projects that we did on a screen, and we would walk through and talk about them and tell a story. Hey, this is a project we did. These are the problems we solved. These are some of the materials. Sometimes we'd bring samples and that sort of stuff. It just was crazy successful on the relationships we built doing that. And then property managers, it's another type of client you can consider. And they, again, what do they care about? Well, they have to fill their buildings. whether it's a commercial office building or a retail building, and they have to be able to communicate with their tenants on what types of signs they're allowed to have. So for us, we would offer to review their lease agreements and their sign criteria within those lease agreements. And so what we would do is, and if you've ever read a sign criteria in a lease agreement, they can be confusing. So what we would do is we would go through and we would specifically outline, this is what you're allowed on the building. These are the graphics you're allowed on the windows. These are the types of panels that you're allowed on the pylon signs or whatever. So we would go through and we'd even put little schematics in there if it was a channel letter sign that was allowed. And then we would always, in exchange for doing this for free, we would always put down, and they would allow it, sign criteria provided by SignTech International or Think Big Signs, and with our phone number and our website. And we got dozens and dozens and dozens of jobs a year from doing this. And we would do it with several property management companies around town, and they appreciated it. So let's talk about the second thing. Now that you've gone out, you've established that these are the types of clients you want to go after, you have to ensure that they are having a great experience with your business, right? So some things that shops do wrong, and guilty as charged, I did them wrong too. But you have to have a system in place that allows you to update jobs so that you had the information to keep your clients updated on what's going on with the projects. Because if you don't do that, a lot of times what ends up happening is you fall into this trap of overpromising and under-delivering on timelines. Oh, sure, we'll get that done. You come back to the shop and your shop foreman has that look on his face like he wants to just stab you with a screwdriver, because now you've overpromised something, and then you get 10 jobs behind it that are going to get bumped. And how many of those people are going to really get ticked off? So just make sure that you have a system in place to track that sort of stuff and communicate honestly to your customers. Also, just quoting jobs on the fly is always a bad thing to do, because what happens is you're either going to overquote it and not get it, or you're going to underquote it, and then what do? You eat it for the relationship's sake, or do you go back to the client and ask for more money, which obviously leaves a really bad taste in their mouth. The problems that creates is that obviously quotes can be late, or you just have no way to really follow up on them, missing project due dates. But I think even more important is losing future opportunities. So, once you get yourself into a relationship with a quality customer, and something goes wrong, something goes south, and I'm not saying that things don't, have bumps in the road sometimes, and obviously if you have a good relationship, you're communicating, you can work that out. But if you really blow the job, that's it. You've missed the opportunity. They're going to move down the road and find somebody else. And you're going to miss future opportunities with them, but also referrals. Because these folks, they tend to run in tight circles, right? Architects know architects, and they're going to share like, hey, this sign vendor is amazing. You should give them a call. And then when, this happened to us a lot, because growth tends to be much more organic when you have quality partnerships with folks. You have a designer, they leave to go to another firm. You've helped them be very successful on a few jobs. Guess what? You're part of their tool chest. Boom, you're going with them. So, and here's an example. It's hard to hide behind disappointed customers. It has a long impact, can have a negative impact on your business. And this is a pretty darn extreme review, but this was a sign shop review I found within a second, of just Googling some reviews for sign shops. And it's like, hey, these folks are only interested in the amount of money we spend. Poor communicators. They don't get projects correct. They're rude. And then they end it with, don't waste your time. Ouch. So what you could do instead? Well, a good way to set yourself apart from other sign shops is to not just be a sign provider, but be a problem solver. So engage your customer right in the beginning of the process with some kind of a discovery process, right? So whether you're setting up an initial meeting to talk about design, but take the time to listen to what they're trying to solve. What's the problem they're trying to solve? Because oftentimes we get so laser focused on gonna sell this deal, that we don't really take the time to hear them. And then educate your clients, right? They don't know what goes into maybe making signs, or they don't necessarily know everything that's allowed for signage, or how things are installed, for example. Like, does that impact the way the building is being built? So I think it's important that you take the time to educate your clients set realistic expectations on time and budget. But also, don't just be like a roadblock. No, you can't do that. Provide creative solutions to what they're trying to solve. And I think the more you are honest with your customers about these things, the more and more they're going to trust you to solve their problems. And that leads to much greater profits and much better quality jobs. Some other things you can do. Here's Joe's hokey stuff again. Train your team to care about your customers' happiness. So what do I mean when I say that? Look, people come to work and they make signs, right? They weld signs, they paint signs, they print graphics, they do t-shirts, whatever they do. But if they have this sense, this whole company culture that they're focused on making the customer happy, it does create a better environment, a more productive environment, a better sense of purpose. So just make sure that everybody on staff buys into that and that they are agents of customer happiness. Also, this seems small, but close every project with a phone call and a thank you card. So I can't tell you, I learned this lesson the hard way so many times. You'd call a customer because the final payment wasn't paid after 30 days. And they're like, Joe, I didn't even know you guys were done. I went by the site and the panels still weren't up. And maybe something was missed on your end, who knows? But all of a sudden now, first of all, you have to reset the invoice. So now you're out another 30 days getting your final balance if you're giving them terms. But also, it just leaves a bad taste in their mouth, right? But if they get a phone call saying, hey, Bob, how did you like your sign? Is everything great? Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you, guys. And then what we would do is we'd send emails, completion photos, and then we actually had some really nice thank you cards printed with our logo embossed. We spent a little bit of money on them, but every time we completed a project with a customer, especially the big ones, if you do a lot of small projects, maybe you set a threshold. You can do some of them in email and some of them in writing, but there's nothing nicer than getting a paper thank you card. Thank you for this project. We appreciate it. Looking forward to our next continued work together or whatever. And then you sign it as the owner and the designer and a couple folks in the shop and send it to the customer. They love it. Also, make your shop inviting. People like to come to sign shops. They're interesting. And I get it. The shop can get a little messy, right? Like you're busy, you got to, if you're a shop that has a router, all the stuff that gets around. And it's okay, people don't mind that. But when they first walk in, it's really nice to have a nice inviting area. The desks are cleaned off and the furniture's kind of cool, and think like a design studio. And so we did that at both of our sign shops, actually. And you walked in the front door, you felt like you were in a design studio with really cool artwork up on the walls and lamps and shelving that was really nice, that had all kinds of sample books and color swatch books and all that. Neon clock up on the wall, and it just goes a long way to give people that first impression that, wow, man, this is slick. These guys really have it together. So anyway, just Joe's advice. So the third point in my talk about growing your business without going completely insane is to grow at your own pace. Like grow at a pace that makes sense for you. And things that some sign shops do wrong, and me too, is don't confuse busyness with growth. I'm going to say that again. If you're super, super busy and you're running around like a crazy person, that doesn't necessarily mean you're growing. And what happens is you tend to react when things feel like they're on fire, right? You're running around like a crazy person. Instead of acting and planning, you're reacting. And what that ends up happening is you're making bad decisions. You're making decisions too quick, and they end up being long-term bad decisions. So maybe you buy equipment too soon because you think, oh my gosh, I got 200 banner jobs. I need to just buy a new printer, or maybe you expand the space too soon. Worse is I'm going to throw some warm bodies at this, and you hire the wrong people. So the problems that this creates, obviously, is you're bleeding. You're bleeding money. You're spending way, way too much time hiring and training people because a lot goes into that. And worst case is, look, sign shops go out of business. They go out of business a lot. And I think for a lot of people that could be avoided if they had just taken control and calmed down and stepped back and paced themselves in their growth. So things you can do instead. I think if I was giving advice on starting your own sign shop from scratch, or even if you're deep into it, the owners sell best. And I know I've talked to people. They say, "Oh, but I don't know about that, man. I'm not really a slick, salesperson." Look, people love buying from people that they like. Just go out there. You're the owner. What's your why story? Hey, my grandparents started this business. My parents, brought it to this point, and I'm just passionate about this legacy. Or, hey, I worked for another sign shop for a couple of years, and man, they messed up so many jobs. I watched clients just throw their hands up in the air, watched employees get discouraged and leave, and I just knew that I could do it better. People love that. They love to get to know your story, and they want to work again with people that they like. So if you're the owner, look, get out there and start meeting people. Develop these high quality relationships and tell your story. Also, focus on making the most profitable products for less. So what do I mean by that? If you are doing a lot of channel letter sets and you decide you're going to make all your channel letters in-house, that's fine. Maybe you invest in a channel letter bending machine, an industrial stapler or whatever, and you just have these processes so tight that it eliminates mistakes at least 99% of the time. Things do happen, as we know. But if you focus on 2 or 3 or no more than a half a dozen things that you're excellent at making, and then think about other ways to get products in, whether it's through outsourcing or whatever, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Also, don't be afraid to cut your losses. Look, if there's a part of your shop that's filled with old signs and junk equipment that's not working, or your yard has a big old broken down truck, get rid of it. Clean it up. Look, if your overhead's super high, subdivide your space and lease it out for a few years. You can always grow back into it. If you have employees that aren't working out for you, I know it's hard to make those decisions, but it's not fair if you hang on to people that aren't carrying their load. It's unfair to the people that do care about the business. Don't be afraid to cut your losses. It's not a sign of failure. It's a sign of growth and wisdom. So let's talk about outsourcing. I'm a big fan. My second sign shop obviously was completely outsourced. We did outsource a few things when we first started SignTech, but the problem was back then it wasn't nearly as easy to outsource. You didn't have the internet to research and do all that. Back then we were selling a lot of channel letter sets. Try shipping channel letter sets all over the country with neon. It was terrible, But now there's so many wholesale companies that have just perfected their processes, their ways to communicate, and I'm a big fan. And people that are buying from you, what they really care about is the quality of how you manage their jobs, right? They're not as concerned with, I know that's always been the big speak in the sign industry, well, we make everything ourselves. And I don't think that's necessarily that important anymore. I think what's really important is that you take really good care of your customers. And if you're outsourcing, look, it gives you a chance to expand revenue by a ton without having to expand your footprint in the shop. And then look, if the economy gets a little janky, contract, right? You can always start bringing some of that work slowly into the shop. And if you get 10 people working for you that are great, that have bought into your customer happiness philosophy and that you've trained them, the last thing in the world you want to do is get rid of them because you make everything in-house and then all of a sudden 25% of your work has gone away. What do? You're going to have to get rid of folks. And it's just a great, smart way to grow. As far as wholesalers go, look, they are just like you are looking for quality relationships. So are they. So figure out, exactly what they build, exactly how they operate. Talk to one of the project managers. How do you want to receive production files? How do you want to receive work orders? How do you want to receive deposits? How do you want us to communicate during the process? They appreciate that. And also too, it's like, look, if you give terms to your customers, let's say you're on a net 30 and they're gracious enough to give you a net 30, pay them a week early. Don't wait till you're paid to pay them. They will love you for it and they will prioritize your work, I promise. So lastly, think about strategic hiring, right? So in this order, I guess. So if you were out as an owner and you're, developing quality relationships and things are going great, if you can get a good solid project manager and designer to support those sales, that would be the first thing I would focus on. And then if you want more sales, bring in another salesperson, someone that buys into your philosophy about customer happiness, and get them out there and also start helping you build quality relationships. And then from there, then slowly but surely start perfecting and expanding your production and installation resources. So anyway, and now the most important part of this whole talk, to help you run a business without losing your freaking mind, is Joe Hokey on steroids. Don't neglect you. Look, change takes time. Be patient with yourself and make small incremental changes because they will add up to huge success. Get a mentor. If you've never had a mentor, it's a great thing. I did not have a mentor on my first go round, and I would highly suggest having somebody that has a lot of experience in business. People like mentoring. It's like a calling to them. So, and it's a great place to be able to, get some advice and really avoid some pitfalls. A mastermind group is another great thing. If you can get into one, if you're a member of a sign association, talk to them and see if they have a mastermind group, or see if they, can recommend 4 or 5 other sign shop owners that you guys could, get together, and whether it's in person a couple times a year, or if nothing else, do a Zoom session a couple times a month and just talk about the challenges that you're having and how did you solve this? What did you do here? I mean, it makes a huge impact on your business. Also, look, if your business is so crazy busy that you can't go away for a vacation for a week or 10 days without you thinking the wheels are going to fall off, something's wrong. So take some time to fix those problems and take a darn vacation. And lastly, look, I always like to say, work happy, right? Have fun and enjoy the process. I want to thank you guys for spending a little bit of time with me today, and I hope these points were helpful. Have a great day. Hey everyone, this is Joe again. Thanks for watching the video, and as a TSA member, you get to try SignTracker free for 14 days. You get 25% off your first annual subscription, which is a huge savings. You have live weekly webinars with me, and also we offer free support to ensure your success. And if you sign up for an annual subscription, you get a free Sign Shop Starter Kit, which includes thousands of sign templates and designs, hundreds of sign shop forms like employee handbooks and subcontract agreements, and so much more. So how to do it is go to sign-tracker.com, sign up for your free trial. It's a full functioning trial. Forward your confirmation email to me, or just shoot me an email, joe@sign-tracker.com. Again, joe@sign-tracker.com. Mention that you're a TSA member in the email, and I will add a 25% off coupon to your account. Thanks again. Let's work together. I'd love to get to know you guys. This is my contact information here if you want to write it down, and reach out anytime. We're here to help. Thank you. Thanks so much for checking out SignTracker, and be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on YouTube.